My father stared at me, his face crimson. "This isn't a request," he seethed. "We're giving this house to your sister, and we're not leaving without the keys." The air in my living room felt thick enough to choke on. My mother sat beside him on the couch I'd bought with my first bonus check, her arms crossed, nodding like some kind of backup enforcer. My sister Madison stood by the window, examining her manicured nails like she'd already won. And then I looked my mother dead in the eyes and said, "You stopped being my family when you decided my grandmother's memory was worth less than a lie." The silence that followed was the sound of our family breaking. You're probably wondering how we got here. How a simple family meeting turned into a war that would expose a secret buried for 40 years. To understand the end, you have to go back to the beginning, to a lifetime of being the son they had but not the child they wanted. My name is Marcus, and for 32 years I was the invisible son. Madison was born when I was 4, and from that moment on, I became background noise. She was the golden child, the princess who could do no wrong, and I was just there, the reliable one, the one who didn't need anything because I never complained. Let me give you some examples, because if I just told you my parents favored my sister, you'd think I was exaggerating. When I turned 16, I wanted a car like any other teenager. My parents told me if I wanted one, I'd have to buy it myself. Fair enough. So I worked 2 jobs. One at a grocery store stocking shelves at 5 in the morning, another bussing tables on weekends. It took me 18 months to save up $3,000 for a beat-up Honda Civic. That car was my pride and joy. 3 weeks after I bought it, my mother called me at work. "Marcus, honey, Madison needs to borrow your car. Hers is in the shop." I didn't even know Madison had a car problem, but I said yes, because that's what I always did. I said yes. She totaled it, wrapped it around a telephone pole coming back from a party at 2 in the morning. She walked away without a scratch, but my car was destroyed. You know what my parents said? "Thank God Madison's okay. These things happen, Marcus. You're so responsible. We know you'll figure it out." No apology. No offer to help me replace it. Madison got a brand new Volkswagen for her 18th birthday 3 months later. I took the bus for another year. Then there was college. I busted my ass in high school, graduated with a 4.0, earned a full academic scholarship to a state university. My parents didn't even attend my graduation. They were in Miami with Madison, celebrating her acceptance to a private art school that cost $60,000 a year, an art school she dropped out of after 1 semester because she didn't vibe with the energy. That 60,000? Gone. But hey, Madison wanted to start a boutique candle business instead. That was another 20,000 of their retirement savings. The candle business lasted 4 months. I never asked them for a dime. I worked through college, graduated with honors, landed a good job in tech, and bought my own house by the time I was 28. I did everything right, and I did it alone. The only person who ever saw me, really saw me, was my grandmother, Eleanor. She was a force of nature, sharp as a tack until the day she died at 93. She'd pull me aside at family gatherings, slip me a 20, and whisper, "You're going to do great things, Marcus. Don't let anyone dim your light." When she passed 2 years ago, she left me her house. Not the family fortune. There wasn't much of that. Just her house. A beautiful old craftsman in a neighborhood that had gentrified like crazy. It was worth about $850,000, and it was mine, free and clear. I thought about selling it, but every time I walked through those rooms, I felt her presence. So I moved in. I made it my home, and for 2 years it was my sanctuary. Until last month, when my parents called and said we needed to have a family meeting. They said it was important. They said it was about Madison's future. I should have known right then that my peace was about to be shattered. They showed up on a Saturday morning. I'd spent the previous evening cleaning, thinking maybe this was about Madison's wedding plans. She'd gotten engaged to some guy named Tyler, a personal trainer who posted shirtless selfies for a living. I figured my parents wanted to discuss venue costs or whatever. I was wrong. Madison walked in first, her eyes doing that sweep of the place like she was appraising it. My mother followed, carrying a Tupperware of cookies she hadn't baked for me since I was 12. My father came in last, already wearing his business face, that stern expression he used when he wanted you to know he was serious. We sat in the living room. I offered coffee. They declined. The air felt strange, rehearsed, like they'd planned this. My father cleared his throat. "Marcus, we need to talk about this house." "Okay," I said. "What about it?" "It's too much house for one person," my mother chimed in, reaching for a cookie. "And Madison's getting married. She and Tyler need a place to start their lives together." I blinked. "That's great. There are plenty of houses on the market." My father leaned forward. "We're not asking you to help them buy a house, Marcus. We're asking you to give them this one." The words hung in the air like a bad smell. "I'm sorry, what?" Madison finally spoke up, her voice doing that syrupy thing she does when she wants something. "Marcus, you're doing so well. You can afford to buy another place. This house has so much history for our family. Grandma would want it to stay in the family, to be a home where kids grow up." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was such an absurd request that laughter was the only possible response. My father's face darkened. "This isn't funny, Marcus." "Oh, it's hilarious," I said, wiping my eyes. "You want me to just hand over an $850,000 house that was left to me because Madison needs a place to live?" "She's your sister," my mother said, like that explained everything. "And I'm your son," I shot back. "The son you've ignored for 30 years while you threw money at every failed business venture and bad decision Madison's ever made." "That's not fair," Madison started. "No. You know what's not fair?" I stood up. "What's not fair is that I worked for everything I have while you coasted on their money. What's not fair is that Grandma left this house to me, not you, and now you want to take it anyway." My father stood too. His face was crimson now, his jaw tight. "This isn't a request," he seethed. "We're giving this house to your sister, and we're not leaving without the keys." The room went silent. "Get out," I said quietly. "Marcus." My mother tried. "Get out." My father straightened his jacket. "Fine, but you need to think very carefully about what you're doing. There are things you don't know about your sainted grandmother. Things that might change how you feel about her little gift." He turned and walked toward the door, my mother and Madison following. At the threshold, he looked back. "Call us when you're ready to do the right thing, before you find out who Eleanor really was." They left. And I stood there in my living room, my hands shaking, wondering what the hell he was talking about. They came back 3 days later. I hadn't called them, but my father showed up at my door with my mother, both of them looking somber. This time, Madison wasn't with them. "We need to talk," my father said. "Really talk." Against my better judgment, I let them in. We sat at the kitchen table. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him, the lines around his eyes deeper. My mother kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at them like she was ashamed. "What I'm about to tell you," my father began, "your grandmother made us promise we'd never speak of. But you deserve to know the truth about how she got the money to buy this house." I waited. In 1985, your mother and I were struggling. We had a small business, a family restaurant we'd poured everything into. It was doing okay, but we needed an investor to expand. Eleanor, my own mother, offered to go into partnership with us. We gave her 30% equity in exchange for $75,000. He paused, his jaw working like the words were hard to say. 6 months later, she pulled out. Completely. She took every penny she'd invested, plus she demanded her 30% equity back in cash. Another $50,000. She gave us 2 weeks to come up with the money, or she'd take us to court. "We didn't have it," my mother whispered. "We had to sell the restaurant for pennies on the dollar. We lost everything. Your father had to declare bankruptcy." My father's voice cracked. "Do you know what it's like to beg your own mother for mercy and have her lawyer serve you papers instead? She destroyed us, Marcus. Destroyed our dream. And you know what she did with that money?" He gestured around the kitchen. "She bought this house. This house is built on the ashes of our lives. Blood money. That's what she left you." My mother leaned forward. "The stress of that bankruptcy. That's when my health problems started. The autoimmune issues, the chronic pain. The doctors said it was triggered by extreme stress. Your grandmother didn't just take our business. She took my health." I sat there stunned. "We never told you," my father continued, "because we didn't want you to see her differently. She was good to you, and we didn't want to poison that. But now that you're choosing her house over your own family, you need to know what kind of person she really was." They stood to leave. "Think about it, Marcus," my mother said softly. "Think about whether you want to live in a house built on your parents' suffering. Madison isn't asking you for much. She's asking you for a chance at happiness. From a house that should never have existed in the first place." After they left, I walked through every room of that house. I touched the walls, the door frames, the kitchen counters. I tried to reconcile the grandmother who used to make me chocolate chip pancakes with the monster they'd just described. Could she really have done that? Could the woman who taught me to ride a bike and told me bedtime stories have been capable of such cruelty? I sat on her favorite chair in the sunroom and closed my eyes. Imagine finding out the person you admired most was a monster. What would you do? Would you give them the keys? Let me know in the comments. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Because something about their story felt off. My grandmother was calculating, yes. She was shrewd. But cruel? That didn't track with the woman I knew. There had to be more to the story. For 2 days, I wandered through that house like a ghost. I'd walk into the kitchen and remember her teaching me how to make her famous pot roast. I'd stand in the hallway and recall how she'd framed every one of my school photos, even when my own parents forgot picture day existed. The living room still smelled faintly of her lavender sachets. Could all of that have been a lie? Could someone fake that kind of love? My parents' story kept playing in my head. The business partnership, the sudden withdrawal, the bankruptcy, my mother's health issues. It all sounded so specific, so painful. Why would they make that up? But then I'd remember little things. like the time I was 10 and I broke my arm falling off my bike. My parents were at one of Madison's dance recitals 2 hours away. They said they'd come home after it was over. Eleanor drove me to the emergency room herself, held my hand through the x-rays, and stayed with me until the cast was on. My parents showed up 6 hours later with leftover cake. Or the time in high school when I made the honor roll for the 4th year in a row. My parents forgot to come to the award ceremony. Eleanor was there in the front row, recording the whole thing on her camcorder, clapping louder than anyone else in the room. That wasn't the behavior of a monster. That was the behavior of someone who gave a damn. I found myself in her old bedroom, the master suite that I'd converted into a home office. I'd kept most of her furniture, including the antique desk where she used to write letters in her beautiful cursive handwriting. I sat at that desk and put my head in my hands. "What really happened, Grandma?" I whispered to the empty room. And that's when I remembered something she used to say. She'd said it so many times over the years that it had become almost a mantra. "A lie can run a mile, Marcus, but the truth runs a marathon. It always wins in the end." I opened my eyes. If my parents were telling the truth, there would be evidence, business dissolution papers, court documents, something. And if they were lying, well, there'd be evidence of that too. My grandmother was meticulous. She kept records of everything. If the truth was anywhere, it would be in this house. I stood up, energized for the first time in days. It was time to find out who was really lying. Eleanor had a small office off the main hallway, a converted sunroom with built-in filing cabinets and shelves lined with binders. She used to joke that she was allergic to clutter and that a disorganized life is a wasted life. I'd been in here 1,000 times, but I'd never really looked, never needed to. The house had been mine for 2 years, but I'd treated her organizational system like a museum exhibit, something to be preserved but not touched. Now I started pulling open drawers. The filing cabinets were labeled by year and category: legal documents, financial records, medical files. Everything was color-coded and alphabetized. It was simultaneously impressive and intimidating. I found the 1980s drawer and started pulling folders. There was a lot to sift through. Property tax records, investment statements, receipts for repairs and renovations. And then, tucked in a folder labeled Business Matters 1985, I found it. Official dissolution papers for Reynolds Family Restaurant, LLC. My hand shook as I read through them. Richard Reynolds, my father, and Eleanor Reynolds listed as co-partners. The business formally dissolved in November 1985. Everything appeared to match what my father had told me. My stomach sank, but I kept reading. Because Eleanor didn't just file the official documents. Paperclipped to the back was a carbon copy of the dissolution agreement, one that must have been her personal copy. And stapled to that copy was a handwritten note in her unmistakable script. I pulled it closer to the desk lamp and read, "Richard, I can't be a party to this. What you're doing is not just illegal, it's morally bankrupt. You're laundering money for the DeMarco family through fake vendor invoices, and you've forged my signature on 3 bank authorizations I never approved. I have copies of everything. I'm pulling my investment and my name from this business immediately. If you try to fight me on this, every document goes to the FBI. The choice is yours." Mom. The paper trembled in my hands. My father wasn't a victim. He was a criminal. And my grandmother hadn't betrayed him. She'd refused to be part of whatever illegal scheme he'd gotten mixed up in. But this note raised more questions than it answered. Who were the DeMarcos? What exactly was my father doing? And why had Eleanor given him an ultimatum instead of just turning him in? I needed more. I needed the whole story. I thought about where Eleanor would have hidden something truly important, something she wanted protected but accessible. And then I remembered the hope chest. She had an antique cedar hope chest at the foot of her bed, now at the foot of my bed. I'd never opened it. She'd kept it locked. And after she died, I just assumed the key was lost. But now I remembered something else she used to say, something that seemed like nonsense at the time. The key to hope is always kept with the heart, Marcus. Remember that. Her locket. She was buried with her wedding ring, but the locket, the silver locket she wore every single day, that was in my nightstand. She'd left specific instructions for it to go to me. I ran to the bedroom and pulled open the drawer. The locket was there, tarnished but intact. I opened it. On one side was a photo of her late husband, my grandfather. On the other side, pressed into the tiny space, was a small brass key. My heart pounded as I knelt by the hope chest and fitted the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click. The smell of cedar washed over me as I lifted the lid. Inside were layers of carefully preserved memories, photographs, letters tied with ribbon, my grandfather's military medals, and at the very bottom, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, was a leather-bound journal. The cover was embossed with her initials, E.M.R., Eleanor Marie Reynolds. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and opened it. The first entry was dated January 3rd, 1985. Richard came to us today with a business proposal. He and Susan want to open a family restaurant. It's a good idea. Richard has always been a talented cook, and Susan has the charm to run the front of house. They need an investor. James and I talked it over. We have the money, and we want to help our son succeed. We agreed to invest $75,000 for 30% equity. I pray this is the fresh start Richard needs. I flipped through the pages. The early entries were optimistic. The restaurant opened. Business was steady. Eleanor and my grandfather would eat there weekly, proud of their son. Then the tone shifted. March 1985. I went to the restaurant today to drop off a pie for Richard's birthday. I arrived early and found him in the back office with two men I didn't recognize. When he saw me, he looked panicked. He rushed me out, saying they were important vendors. But I heard one of them say something that chilled me. Make sure the invoices match the cash drops. Vendors don't talk like that. April 1985. I can't shake the feeling something is wrong. I asked to see the business accounts. I'm a 30% owner. After all, Richard made excuses. Said he'd get me the documents. He never did. May 1985. James suggested I let it go, that I'm being paranoid. But I didn't build a successful career by ignoring my instincts. I went to the restaurant when I knew Richard would be out. I spoke with Maria, the bookkeeper. She's a sweet girl, barely 22. She looked terrified when I asked about the invoices. She told me she has concerns but is afraid to lose her job. I asked her to make me copies of anything that didn't look right. She agreed. June 1985. Maria gave me the documents today. My God. Richard has been running a money laundering operation through the restaurant. Fake invoices from shell companies, companies that don't exist. Cash coming in, getting deposited, then transferred out to pay these fake vendors. The money is coming from the DeMarco family. I recognize the name. They're connected to organized crime in the city. Richard is washing their drug money through our family business. I had to stop reading to catch my breath. This was worse than I'd imagined. July 1985. I confronted Richard today. Showed him the evidence. He didn't deny it. He said he got in over his head with some debts, and the DeMarcos offered him a way out. He said it's just temporary, that he'll get out soon. I told him he needs to shut it down immediately and go to the authorities. He refused. He said the DeMarcos don't let people walk away. He said if he stops, they'll kill him. July 1985, second entry. I've made my decision. I won't turn my son in to the FBI. I can't. But I also can't be part of this. I told Richard I'm withdrawing my investment and demanding my equity back in cash. I told him if he fights me on it, all of my evidence goes to the authorities. He looked at me with such hatred, but he agreed. I suspect he's glad to have me out. One less witness. August 1985. The business has been dissolved. Richard had to sell to pay me out. He and Susan are furious with me. They've told the family I betrayed them, that I destroyed their dream out of greed. They won't speak to me. But I have something they don't know about. I kept copies of all the evidence. And I've been quietly helping the FBI build a case against the DeMarcos. I've been feeding them information anonymously. I can't save Richard from his choices, but I can help make sure the people who manipulated him face justice. September 1985. The DeMarcos were arrested today. Massive federal raid. The FBI agent I've been working with told me I should be proud. My information was crucial. But I don't feel proud. I feel sick. Richard will never know what I did to protect him. He'll hate me for the rest of his life, thinking I'm the villain. But if I'd done nothing, he'd either be in prison or dead. At least this way, he gets to walk away. September 1985, second entry. I bought a house today. A beautiful craftsman that needs work. I'll fix it up. Maybe someday, when my grandsons are old enough to understand, one of them will want it. I'll make it a home filled with love. Maybe that will be enough. The entries after that were sporadic, references to my childhood, her joy at being my grandmother, her sadness that Richard never forgave her. And then, the final entry, dated 2 weeks before she died. I'm leaving the house to Marcus, not because he's perfect, but because he's strong. Because he'll need a fortress when the truth comes out. And it will come out. Lies always surface. Richard has spent 40 years rewriting history, painting himself as the victim and me as the villain. He's told that lie so many times that I think he believes it now. But the truth is, in these pages, Marcus will find them. He's too smart not to. And when he does, he'll understand. This house isn't just a house. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same. I hope he forgives me for the burden I'm leaving him, but I trust him to carry it well. Grandma. I closed the journal and pressed it to my chest. She hadn't just left me a house. She had left me a weapon. And I was about to use it. If you believe some secret should never stay buried, subscribe now, because the fallout is coming. I spent the next week building my case. Step 1 was simple: secure the evidence. I took the journal, all the business documents, Eleanor's handwritten notes, and every relevant page to a professional document preservation service. They digitized everything, creating high-resolution scans that would hold up in any court. I put the originals in a safe deposit box at a bank across town. My parents weren't getting anywhere near them. Step 2 was more delicate: arm the allies. My father had spent 40 years telling the family that Eleanor was a monster. My Aunt Kelly, Eleanor's daughter, barely spoke at her funeral. My Uncle Mark had sent a card to the wake that said, "Sorry for your loss," like she'd been a stranger. They'd all bought my father's story, but they deserved the truth. I created a password-protected PDF with scans of the journal entries, the business documents, and Eleanor's notes. I wrote a cover letter explaining everything. Then I sent it to Kelly and Mark with a simple message. "Don't open this until you hear from me. When you do, you'll understand why Dad lied about Eleanor for 40 years. The password is Truth985. Trust me. Marcus." Step 3 was the most satisfying. Set the trap. I called my father on a Wednesday evening. He picked up on the first ring. "Marcus," he said, his voice cautious. "Dad?" I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I've had some time to think." Silence on the other end, waiting. "You were right," I continued. "I deserve to know the truth about Grandma, about the house, about everything." "I'm glad you're finally seeing reason," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "Let's meet tomorrow, at the house. Bring Mom and Madison. There are some documents I think you all need to see. I think they'll help us come to an understanding." "Documents?" His voice tightened. "Just some things I found. Grandma's old papers. I think they'll clarify everything. Can you come around too?" Another pause. Then, "We'll be there." "Great. See you tomorrow, Dad." I hung up and smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. Tomorrow, the lies ended. They arrived at 2:15, 15 minutes late, making me wait. A power play. My father walked in first, shoulders back, that confident smirk on his face. He thought he'd won. My mother followed, already reaching for tissues in her purse, ready for whatever performance she'd need to give. Madison came in last, holding Tyler's hand. She'd brought her fiancé as backup, or maybe as an audience for her victory. "Marcus," my father said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends. "I'm proud of you for coming to your senses. This is the right thing." "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the dining room table. I'd laid out 4 chairs on one side, one on the other. They sat down together, a united front. I sat across from them, a single manila folder in front of me. "So," Madison said, glancing around like she was already redecorating in her mind, "do you have the paperwork ready? We can get the title transferred this week, and Tyler and I can start moving in by—" "I found something," I interrupted quietly. My father's smirk faltered. "What?" "Grandma's papers, the ones about the business." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, Eleanor's handwritten note from 1985. I placed it in the center of the table. "This is her note to you, Dad. From when she pulled out of the restaurant. Want to read it out loud, or should I?" His face went from tan to ash gray in seconds. "Where did you get that?" my mother whispered. "From Grandma's files. You know how meticulous she was." I pulled out the next document, the business dissolution papers with the annotations. "See, the thing about your story is that it was good. Really good. The bankruptcy, Mom's health issues, the evil mother who destroyed your dreams. It was almost believable." "Marcus, you don't understand." My father started. "No, I understand perfectly." I pulled out copies of the journal pages, placing them one by one on the table like I was dealing cards. "I understand that in 1985, you got involved with the DeMarco crime family. I understand that you were laundering their drug money through a family restaurant. And I understand that when Grandma found out, she gave you a choice. let her walk away quietly, or she'd turn all her evidence over to the FBI. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Madison looked confused. What are you talking about? Money laundering? That's insane. It's all here, I said, tapping the journal pages. In her own handwriting, dates, names, documentation. She even kept copies of the fake invoices you were using, Dad. The shell companies, the cash drops, everything. I pulled out the final piece, a copy of a newspaper article from September 1985. Federal raid nets DeMarco crime family. I slid it across the table. She didn't just walk away from you. She fed information to the FBI for months, anonymously. She helped them build the case that took down the people who were using you. She saved your life, Dad. Because if she hadn't helped the feds shut them down, you'd either be in prison right now or dead. The silence in that room was deafening. My father's jaw worked, but no sound came out. My mother was crying, but I didn't know if it was shame or grief or just the shock of being caught. So here's what's actually true, I continued, my voice steady and cold. Grandma didn't betray you. She protected you. She took the blame, let you tell everyone she was the villain, and she never defended herself because she knew that exposing the truth would destroy you. She sacrificed her reputation to save your freedom. I stood up and walked to the window, my back to them. And you repaid her by trying to steal from me, by using her memory as a weapon, by lying about who she was for 40 years. Marcus, please, my mother sobbed. Your father was different then. He made mistakes. And you made me think my grandmother was a monster. I spun around. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I spent 2 weeks questioning every memory I had of her, wondering if her love was fake. You made me doubt the one person who never let me down. My father finally found his voice. It was small, broken. What do you want? I want you to leave, I said simply. I want you to walk out of this house and never ask me for another thing. Not the house, not money, not forgiveness, nothing. Marcus, we're your family, my mother tried. No, I cut her off. Family doesn't do what you've done. Family doesn't sacrifice one child to spoil another. Family doesn't lie about the dead to steal from the living. You stopped being my family a long time ago. I just didn't see it until now. Madison stood up, her face flushed. You're really going to choose a dead woman and some old papers over your own parents? Over me? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Maybe for the first time in years. She genuinely believed she was the victim here. She'd been so coddled, so protected from consequences her entire life, that she couldn't even comprehend what she'd been part of. I'm not choosing anything, Madison. You all made your choices. You chose to come into my home and demand I give you a house you have no right to. You chose to lie about Grandma. Those were your choices. I'm just living with the consequences of your actions. That's all. My father stood slowly, his hands shaking. If you do this, if you turn your back on us, there's no coming back from it. I know, I said. And one more thing. I've already sent copies of everything to Aunt Kelly and Uncle Mark. They know the truth now. The whole family knows. So you can stop playing the victim. Your 40-year lie is over. I watched the realization hit him. The extended family he'd spent decades manipulating with his sob story, they all knew now. The pitying looks he'd gotten at every family gathering, the subtle cold shoulders Eleanor had endured, all of it was about to reverse. His reputation, the one thing he'd cared about more than his own mother's memory, was destroyed. Get out, I said quietly. Now. They left. My mother was sobbing. Madison was furious, already on her phone, probably calling her friends to complain. Tyler looked confused, but followed. My father stopped at the door and turned back. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, might finally take responsibility. "You're making a mistake," he said instead. "No," I replied. "I'm correcting one." The door closed behind them, and I stood alone in my grandmother's house, my house, listening to the silence. It wasn't a comfortable silence. It wasn't peaceful, but it was honest, and that was enough. The first few days after the confrontation were quiet, too quiet. I half expected my father to show up with a lawyer or my mother to stage some kind of intervention, but there was nothing, just silence. My phone buzzed occasionally, texts from my parents' number that I deleted without reading, a voicemail from Madison that I'm sure was full of insults and accusations. I blocked them all, but I did hear from Aunt Kelly. She called 4 days after the meeting. I almost didn't answer, expecting more family drama, but her voice was soft, tentative. "Marcus, it's Kelly. I opened the file you sent." I waited. "I'm so sorry," she said, and her voice cracked. "All these years I blamed her. I thought she was cruel and selfish. Richard always said—" She stopped. "It doesn't matter what he said. I should have known better. Mom would never have done what he claimed. I should have trusted her." We talked for 2 hours that night. She told me stories about Eleanor that I'd never heard, about how kind she'd been to her growing up, how she'd always been the one to show up when it mattered. She told me about the rift that formed after 1985, how their family gatherings became tense and uncomfortable, how Eleanor would smile through it all, but Kelly could see the sadness in her eyes. "She could have told us the truth at any time," Kelly said. "She had the evidence, but she protected Richard anyway, even when it cost her everything." "That's who she was," I said. "That's who we should all aspire to be," Kelly replied. Uncle Mark called the next day with a similar message. Shame, regret, gratitude that I'd finally revealed the truth. The extended family shifted. The narrative changed. Eleanor's memory was restored, and my father's carefully constructed victim story crumbled. I heard through the grapevine that he and my mother stopped attending family events. Too ashamed to face everyone, I suppose. Or maybe just too proud to admit they'd been wrong for 4 decades. Madison got married 6 months later. I wasn't invited. I didn't care. That was a year ago. Now, I sit in the sunroom where Eleanor used to read every morning, and I feel her presence in a way I couldn't before. This house isn't haunted by her ghost. It's alive with her integrity. Every room tells a story of the woman she was, principled, loving, willing to be the villain if it meant protecting the people she loved. I've had time to process everything, the betrayal, the lies, the loss of the family I thought I had. And you know what? I don't regret it. Because the truth is, I didn't lose a family that day. I lost the illusion of a family, and that's not the same thing. Real family, the kind Eleanor gave me, doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dignity, doesn't demand you give up what's yours because someone else wants it more. Real family shows up, sees you, protects you even when it costs them everything. I have a new family now. Kelly and I have dinner once a month. Mark invites me to his kids' birthday parties. I'm building relationships with cousins I barely knew growing up. People who only knew me as Richard's quiet son, but now see me as Marcus, just Marcus, standing on my own. And I'm dating someone. Her name is Jen. She's a teacher, funny and kind and completely unimpressed by drama. When I told her the whole story, she just looked at me and said, "Your grandma sounds amazing." I wish I could have met her. "She would have loved you," I said. "The house is exactly as I want it now." I renovated Eleanor's bedroom, turning it into a proper master suite. I kept her desk, though, and her hope chest. And the journal sits in a shadow box on my wall, a reminder of what truth costs and why it's worth paying. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty, if cutting off my parents permanently was too harsh, if I should have given them a chance to apologize, to make amends. But then I remember my father's last words at the door. "You're making a mistake." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Not, "Please forgive me." Just another manipulation. Another attempt to make me question my own judgment. No, I made the right call. I took back my house, but I lost the family I thought I had. But maybe you can't lose something that was never really there to begin with. So I'll ask you, was what I did justice, or was it just a tragedy? Let me know your verdict in the comments below, because I've made my peace with it. I sleep well in this house. I'm building a life that Eleanor would be proud of. And every time I walk through these rooms, I remember what she taught me, that sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same. That truth runs a marathon, and it always wins in the end. And that a house is more than walls and a roof. It's a fortress, a testament, a reminder that you don't have to accept the story people tell about you, or the story they tell about the people you love. You can find the truth, you can fight for it, and you can win. If you love stories where the truth always wins, make sure you subscribe. Because every family has a secret, and we're here to uncover them all. And if you're still not subscribing, tell me why in the comments. Are some family secrets better left buried? I don't think so. Not anymore. The truth set me free, and I'm never going back.